Welcome back to the NBA Daily. I'm Dave DuFour here with Law Murray for the Los Angeles Clippers team preview preseason. We're not even to training camp yet, but I had to get Law in here to give me his thoughts on this upcoming season. Law, the Clippers were 50-32 last year. Good for the fifth seed in the West, but a little bit of a sneaky 50-win team. You know, they only got 37 games out of Kawhi Leonard. Do you feel like they underperformed last year, or was that about what you expected, knowing that they were going to be short of Kawhi for most of the season?
They didn't underperform in the slightest. Like, that team was projected to be bottom 5 in the West. Even by my, understanding of how the Clippers are, and especially when their expectations are depressed, they exceeded my expectations as well. Like, I thought they'd be 8th place, squarely in the play-in tournament discussion. They needed every one of those 50 wins to avoid the play-in tournament. They had the best finish that I think a Clippers team can ever claim to have. They won, I believe, 18 of their last 21 games, right? So um, I felt like last regular season was an exceptional success. And what they did in the playoffs was crushing. It was a very disappointing result considering how well they were playing with the guys that they were having, and the fact that, unlike most Clippers postseasons, injuries were not a conversation.
Right.
So when you have that, when you're always talking about we need the luck, and you had that and you were playing well, for it to end in a game 7 on the road the way that it did was very disappointing. But it shouldn't take away from what they did in the regular season, especially when you give the context of how they had to do it.
Yeah, although to go 7 with the Nuggets, who went 7 with the Thunder, who had to go 7 to win the title, I don't know, man. That's, at least you're not saying, "Let's throw the whole thing away." That was still a pretty good year,
Right. And
as
that's
far as
why
I'm
so many
concerned.
people are back.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of the changes. What do you feel like is the most impactful change? Like, just day one, the biggest difference between last year's team and this upcoming year?
It's between not having Norman Powell, who I thought was a borderline all-star and was a major reason they were able to sustain and be. I don't think they were good offensively before Kawhi got back, but they were obviously good enough to win some games. Um, to not have him, but to have the opportunity that John Collins presents, and to be able to backfill Norm and have Bradley Beal, a player who, on paper, everyone's going to look at Washington Brad, star level Brad.
Right.
I don't think that Brad's that player anymore, but you know what? He has the best opportunity to show that he can impact winning with the with what the Clippers need, and losing from not having Norman Powell on the team. What John Collins gives you is something that the Clippers did not have last year, and that is the optionality that comes with athletic size, a perimeter threat and an interior threat on offense. And then, because he's athletic and because he's 6'9", you can, protect your stars, not just Kawhi, who everyone's like, oh, Kawhi's going to play more three, but James Harden was the guy wrestling with the big
Right.
power forwards throughout October, when Kawhi came back in January, and even to start the playoffs against the Nuggets.
Well, yeah,
That
I
guy
mean,
gets
the Aaron
relief
Gordon put
as
back
well.
dunk. James Harden's the guy on the back line, not
Exactly.
boxing out. Yeah, yeah. I get that.
That's the
Do you,
biggest reason that John is there. That play right there, it's why Norm's not on the team that series, and it's why John Collins is finally on this team.
do you feel like John Collins is going to play up a little bit? Allow them to, I mean, he can stretch the floor, he can protect the rim. Like, maybe he can play a little bit of small ball. I mean, although he's pretty big, small ball 5 for them. Find ways to create offense to make up for when Zoo has to sit, because the defense when Zoo would hit the bench, I mean, it was not the easiest time for the Clippers.
Well, that's why Brook Lopez is there too. I do think you're going to see. Look, pick a position. Guys are going to play it. You know,
Yeah.
Kawhi's going to play 3 and 4. I bet you Kawhi plays some 1, to be honest with you. John Collins is going to play some 4 and 5. Brook Lopez is going to play some 5. And you know what? Brook Lopez is going to play some minutes with Zubats as well. Like, they have things that you can credibly say, we need to see what this looks like. And then they should be excited about those things, especially offensively. John is a player who I don't worry about as much offensively because as a play finisher, he cleaned up that jump shot. Like, you remember when his finger was absolutely mangled,
Yeah.
in Atlanta a few years ago? His jump shot recovered in Utah. That's huge. He doesn't have the same value, especially to a team like the Clippers who prioritize skill at
Right.
those positions outside of center. Like, he doesn't have the same value if he shoots sub 30%. But if he's going to shoot 40% from three, as well as be a guy who can put pressure on the rim in a variety of ways, that's tremendous. Offensively, the Clippers are exciting. Defensively, I'm wondering if they keep that same energy. And that's where I question the John Collins fit. People think, oh, you're bigger. That means you're going to be sturdy defensively. That is absolutely not always the case. Defense is about focus and continuity and being in the right place more often than the other teams in the league. And we're going to see if that's going to be the case and how John fits into that.
Is there anybody on the Clippers that you feel like could break out or like take a big leap forward, or are you more looking at who's going to take a step back? I mean, this is an older team. There's not a lot of, there's no like young star that is, waiting in the wings. What are you expecting from the individual players this season?
Yeah, I don't expect anybody to break out. This is going to be the oldest team in the league or close to it. There are no breakout candidates. These guys are all known commodities, and even the guys who aren't 30 and over are guys who have limited breakout capabilities. Like, what you see is what you get from Derrick Jones Jr. What you see is what you get from even a guy like Ivica Zubac. Maybe he's the closest, but we saw what he did last year. Last year, it was a function of increased opportunity, not that Ivica Zubac learned how to play basketball last year. He was always good. He's also always been undervalued. So, it would be great to see if he can make an all-star push, but unless that dude comes back with a three-point shot that he learns from Brooke Lopez, he is what he is. I'm worried about James Harden. He was incredible last year from a leadership standpoint, from a consistency and reliability standpoint. I know everyone's going to talk about his decline over the course of the playoffs. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that James Harden played a crazy amount of minutes, being on the ball, being the play starter for this team. And when you have his body type and when you get to be his age and when you're coming off of that kind of season, you have to be concerned about the effects of that going into the next season. I saw it with Reggie Jackson and Marcus Morris 3 years ago. And again, James is a different body type. I believe that he can take care of himself and get himself ready to start the season and maintain himself as the season goes along. But James is not here to be a role player. He is here to be the guy who helps them get to the playoffs, which he's done every year of his career. He's never played in the play-in tournament. He's always played for playoff teams. But then he needs a guy who helps him in in the playoffs. His game is such where as a series goes along, you get used to seeing what he does and he gets easier to defend. That's why he has that random game 5 where he lays an egg or whatever. It's fine though if he has enough guys around him so that it's not about what James does, it's how James can impact his teammates and impact the game as a whole. But I am very concerned about James. That's not to say this isn't me reporting, oh, James is, like James is going to be fine in those terms, but it's just science. It's just, he's a human being. Though that was a ton of minutes last year, a ton of
Yeah.
games, and he was great. He was all NBA. You have to reasonably expect there to be some kind of residual effect. And that's why Brad's important. And that's why Chris Paul is on this team.
I mean, well, the guy that we haven't quite hit on yet. What about Kawhi Leonard? I mean, what are the expectations out of him for this season? I mean, you mentioned that they finished the year healthy, but they didn't start it healthy. Again, he only played
Right.
37 regular season games. He did look excellent in the playoffs, and there were definitely times during even the series with the Nuggets where he was the best player on the court. Um, this is the story that we always tell every single September when we talk about Kawhi Leonard is if he's healthy, if he's healthy. I mean, like, what are the expectations? Not just health, because you don't have a crystal ball, but just what do they need him to do during the season and heading into the playoffs for them to say, hey, he had a great year?
he needs to play about 60 games. There's about 15 back-to-backs, I believe, and it doesn't make sense for him to play in any of those back-to-backs unless you get to April and you need some dubs. He's shown that situationally he can play a back-to-back. He did that last year. He didn't play a back-to-back until the very end of the season when they needed every win they could get. So there's that. I think the team and Kawhi, they have a great relationship, man. Like there's a great open lens of communication. Unfortunately, the media doesn't get that same transparency, but we're not as important as, Kawhi and the coaching staff and the front office and his teammates. He needs to play enough games. Whatever position he plays, he needs to defend consistently well. The Clippers defended outstanding without him. They actually dropped off a bit with him for a change before picking it back up at the end of the regular season. Kawhi's reputation is good when it comes to like one-on-one, taking the challenge on when you need it. But that needs to be we're starting the game with that energy, and game in, game out, quarter in, quarter out. Like he's going to have to he can tell his teammates what he expects, but he's going to need to uphold that level for himself. And I'm interested to see what that looks like, considering Kawhi is, 34 years old. Like guys aren't the same defenders in your 30s as you are in your 20s. And then offensively, just as James is going to need more help because of the workload from last year, that's on Kawhi to be like, hey, I'm here starting the season and I'm going to be fresh. Like he's healthy right now. He's dunking in Asia somewhere, like he's feeling good. And that's a blessing considering what Kawhi's been through every offseason the previous 4 years. So he needs to be good. He needs to be great. And the Clippers need to be responsible and accountable as far as making sure that he can do that in the regular season. But he's another guy. He's got to reestablish his greatness in the playoffs again. He was really good in the playoffs. He was not the level that, was like, hey, if Kawhi's here, you're good. It wasn't good enough. So we're going to see if him playing a more normal regular season enables him to reach a level in the playoffs, considering he might be at the end of his great years coming up soon.
Yeah. This is a team that I think, they just made a bunch of moves over the summer. You see them making any moves midseason if things aren't going the way that they feel like they ought to be, or if there's an opportunity?
Absolutely. This is every season with Lawrence Frank. Okay. The only year that Lawrence didn't move a guy mid-season as far as a rotation guy is when they picked up James shortly after Halloween, right? Like that's the big move that they made then. That was an incredibly disruptive move. They lost 6 straight games,
Yeah.
after that move was reported and guys were flying cross country to try and take physicals. Like this team is got 11 credible rotation players. If it doesn't work, then there are tradable contracts. That's just how it is. I think Bogdanovich is probably the guy with a bullet that I look at as, if he's fits and he's playing really well, you know, like, is he going to be on the team? If he doesn't fit, if he's not playing well, if he gets to be the odd man out, if he the guy that winds up getting moved, like there's just too many guys, and some of them are too old and too set to realistically bring anything back. They have exponentially more value to the Clippers than anyone. Like Chris Paul is going to be on the team. Period. You're not trading Chris Paul, for example. I don't think they would trade Nico Batum. But like, yeah, a guy like Bogdanovich, a guy who's not so critical that it changes a lot, but also a guy who can reasonably get moved if you need to move him. That's how he got to the team
He's
last
also a
year.
useful player. Right. He's a useful player, though. I
Exactly.
mean, you have a guy who can shoot enough, who rebounds enough, who, can ball handle enough. He should get a spot here with the Clippers to maybe show
They
that
need
he's
him.
exactly. What did you think
They
about his
need
run with
him.
them during the playoffs? I thought he was instrumental in that fight against the Nuggets. I mean, it felt like every single time they needed a timely rebound, he was on the court. He was the one getting a hand on a ball.
He needed to be better. he needed to be a lot better. His signature moment in the playoffs in a positive way was he capped the comeback in game 4, but no one cares about that because of how game 4 ended with Aaron Gordon. Overall, Bogey was sub 40% from the field, sub 30% from 3, and he was attacked repeatedly in the playoffs. And that's the kind of thing where, that Bogey was really good in the regular season once he got comfortable. And him getting comfortable meant running pick and rolls. He unlocked a version of Zoo that we thought Zoo was already unlocked to begin that season. Like Bogey actually enhanced Zoo even further from March on, and that was great. Like there's a chemistry there. I say this about anticipating Clippers moves, not to say that, oh, they want to do something. We're just being plain. Dave and I were having a conversation about look at the history of what they've done every year. They've made a move. Who might be the most vulnerable? We've identified a guy. That's not to say I think it would be great if the Clippers can say the guys that begin the year in October are the guys who begin the postseason in April. That is the best case scenario. That is the ideal case. You have to be prepared for if things happen where they go into January and February and say, we need to tweak things if we're going to get to the playoffs.
I think that this team has done a really good job of reshuffling the deck when they've had to. I mean, it feels like almost every single summer, much less at midseason, they've had to kind of make changes, make tweaks during this entire Kawhi Leonard run, basically with the team. What do you see as the biggest swing factor for the team? Like, what's the thing that's going to make the biggest difference for whether the Clippers are in title contention or not?
I think that's going to be about Brad. We gotta really be real about Bradley Beal here. His ceiling is when Kawhi's got to miss these back to backs that he can scale up in a way that he did not do in Phoenix. Brad, first of all, missed a ton of games. That was his single biggest issue. You can talk about the coaches, you could talk about the roster, you could talk about the role assignment, you could talk about fitting in with guys, you can talk about the incredibly terrible vibes on that Phoenix team. Bradley Beal did not play enough games. And that was the case in Phoenix. That was the case his last 2 years in Washington. If Brad doesn't play 60 games, then Brad's going to have the same issues in LA that he's had the previous 4 years. That being said, Kawhi's going to need help. James is going to need help. The Clippers, when I look at Norm was incredible, but Norm had one major deficiency, and they couldn't trust Norm to be a guy who can handle the ball and make plays, aside from James. That's why Chris Dunn started so many games because they needed a release valve so that teams didn't, harass James coming up the floor. Brad is supposed to be an upgrade in the ball handling department, a guy who can run a pick and roll and make good decisions out of those pick and rolls. Brad is a guy who is from St. Louis and Teron Lewis from Missouri. Like there's a relationship aspect is why Brad is here. If Brad's playing for money, Brad's trying to make that money up that he gave away in this buyout to get to the Clippers. So he's highly motivated. He's got to get his body right and he's got to get his mind right and he's got to fit defensively because there's a chance that John Collins does start. And that means
Yeah.
someone's got to guard the point of attack. And the Clippers can say whatever they want about, oh, we think that he can do this and do that defensively. We trust John Collins on switches. We trust Brad Beal to guard 94. I don't trust him, but who cares what I think? It's if you're going to use that lineup, he's got to guard. And if you do start Derrick Jones, guys just are going to have to suck it up and bring that same energy. Brad is a huge swing factor, not only on both sides of the floor, but just being on the floor to begin with.
Right. And offensively, look, he is excellent at coming off DHO, which Zubac has gotten very good at DHO handoffs. Brook Lopez is pretty good at setting screens for DHO. So, like, there's going to be options there for him, especially second units. Like, he's got to be the guy. And this is what we said when he got to Phoenix. He's got to be the guy who's like 18 to 20 a game for 65 games. That he has got to be able to be that guy, the guy that when Harden and Kawhi both have to sit, he can get you a bucket. And I think he'll
Right.
have an opportunity there. Ty Lue likes a guy who can get a shot off the dribble. So he's going to get a chance to do it. But if it doesn't work, I just don't know where they go from there. I mean, I don't know what their options are. Which leads me finally, I guess, what's the most realistic outcome for the Los Angeles Clippers this season, in your opinion?
The outcome is they better win a playoff series. Like, they haven't won a playoff series in either of the previous 4 years. And some of it is injuries, but you can't use that excuse for 2025 unless you want to say that certain guys ran out of gas because they had to compensate for Kawhi's absence, and Kawhi ran out of gas because he had to make up for the fact that he missed the first half of the year. Okay, the excuses shouldn't be a factor here. They need to win a playoff series. And I think that they are good enough to win a playoff series. Beyond that, I'm not ready to say the Clippers are contenders. They're led by two guys who I'm not sure they have the gas to get through multiple teams in the West in the playoffs, but they should be good enough to get through at least one. And so I expect them to be in the semifinals. I think there will be some consequences for not winning a playoff series this year, but I also think that I'd be surprised if they got to the conference finals. It would be a good surprise. We'd have to analyze how it happens, but I don't think that team has the horses to break through to be one of the last two teams standing in the West.
Thunder is so good. Nuggets got so much better. It's going to be tough. I mean, the West, again, is looking like a bloodbath. Luckily, though, we got Law Murray covering so much of the Western Conference, all of LA now. And so we'll be following along with Law, and Law will be here with us all season long. Thank you, Law Murray. We're going to see what the Clippers do this year. Guys, stick around after the break. We got more team previews coming your way.
All right, folks, we're joined alongside James Edwards, the third of The Athletic, who covers the New York Knicks for us here. Look, it was an interesting offseason for the Knicks just because it started out right after they got eliminated with a bit of a bang, the news of Tom Thibodeau being let go, and then the coaching search that ended with Mike Brown. A couple of other kind of news items happened as well, a couple free agency signings, an extension, but generally, what do you think was the most impactful change for them this offseason? I'm assuming your answer is Mike Brown.
Well, I think that's hard to say because we don't know, right?
Okay.
Obviously that was the biggest move of the offseason,
Yeah.
firing a coach who had led you to heights you hadn't reached in quite some time. And listen, the offense struggled the second half of the year. It struggled against good defenses. Like, I understand why you may think that you need to make a tweak, and it starts with the easiest one, which is the coach, to get to where you want to go. Mike Brown is a good coach. It's hard to say whether or not just him coming in will upgrade the team, right? I think you just have to wait and see on that. In terms of impactful, I mean, you have to kind of go. I guess you would have to say the Mikal Bridges extension. They've locked in their core. They spent a lot of picks on him. It wasn't always rosy for him his first season in New York. He had some big moments in the playoffs defensively. So the fact that they locked down and made such a big commitment, I think that obviously was kind of what we all thought would happen when they traded the picks. But I thought there was a time too where you wondered, did both sides want to continue this? Obviously they did, but yeah, I would have to say that just because they've locked in the core for the next few years, and now they have to be very, very careful about second apron here going forward if they can't win a title.
Yeah, and the locking in the core, like the way that they did it, obviously Brunson taking that pay cut, Mikal Bridges providing them with a level of flexibility too. Like, that aspect seems to be a buy-in collectively with what they're trying to achieve goal-wise. I mean, making it to the conference finals last year and losing in the way that they did, I think there's a very clear goal in mind heading into this season of championship or bust, finals or bust type of mentality for a team that's built to win, right, in this current NBA, in the current Eastern Conference. I want to go back to Mike Brown, though, because there is a level of expectations now, especially with how important Tom Thibodeau was to the organization and building it from what it was before Tom Thibodeau and what it became just last season. Is there any sort of idea of what changes both organizationally and on the floor, or is it just a wait and see process with that?
I mean, I think there's been breadcrumbs of what they want to do, and even stuff kind of straight out of the bird's mouth. I mean, I think one thing that's big for New York is collaboration. Um, Working with the front office, working with the coaching staff. I don't necessarily think that was Thibodeau's strong suit, right? I don't know if people have ever noticed this. I think we've talked about. I think I brought this up on a show with you. If you ever watch like when the Knicks called a timeout, most coaches
I remember this. Yeah.
would deliberate with their assistant coaches and then go into a huddle. Tibbs never really coalesced. Is that the right word?
Coalesced? Yeah.
Coalesced?
Sure.
I said
Yeah,
coalesce.
yeah.
Coalesce.
Hey, it's
Sorry,
August. We're good.
It's the off season. Yeah, don't blame me. My brain's not working. He never would talk with his assistants, and it's not that he disliked his assistants. I think it was just Tibbs this is what we're doing. This is my show.
Yeah.
So I think collaboration's big. Mike Brown has talked about them wanting to play fast. I think this team does need to play fast. They were one of the slowest teams in the league. Playing fast means turning it up defensively, turning defense into offense. It doesn't necessarily mean just like pushing the pace when a team scores. I think it also means like moving the ball quicker in the half court, cutting, moving. So the Kings played fast. Obviously, it's not apples to apples. De'Aaron Fox is a very fast player. Domantas Sabonis is one of the best passing big men in basketball. So there's going to be an adjustment period there. But I think there are certainly both organizationally and on the floor that they're at least going to attempt and hope unlocks whatever it was that they felt that needed to be unlocked last year.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when I heard the Mike Brown news, I instantly thought of Sabonis and how much he put the ball in Sabonis' hands in Sacramento, and I was like, all right, are you going to be doing the same with Karl Anthony Towns, who I think from a standstill perspective can be a good playmaker, but on the go, making moves with kind of like utilizing his driving game to make plays. Yeah. It's a little bit different of a story, especially because he can end up being a little bit more turnover prone. And I'm curious how he adjusts his offensive system, especially because Jalen Brunson also the team loves to isolate because their best player is such a good isolation scorer.
Right.
And so you look forward at this team and you look at some of the players. Who do you think needs to take the biggest step forward? And maybe on the other side, is there a player that you're looking might have to take a step back?
I think offensively, Mikal Bridges needs to take a step forward. If you look at the numbers, struggled from three this year, I think around 35%. Really couldn't hit a three above the break. Most of his 3-point makes came from the corners. Lived in the mid-range. Very efficient at it, one of the best mid-range shooters in basketball, but those types of shots aren't necessarily conducive to overall team functioning. And he really didn't go to the rim, didn't draw a lot of fouls. I think just, if I'm off the top of my head, I think just a hair over 100 free throw attempts on the season.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't like contact. Not a big fan of contact.
Yeah, it was definitely something that was noticeable throughout the year. His intentionality with just getting to the mid range and not necessarily getting to the hole.
Yeah.
I'd be curious if Mike Brown utilizes him as a point of attack defender with the level of volume that Tibbs did. That's a lot of screens he took. A lot of responsibility there, right? But that's why they brought him in. So I'm curious to see if they mix that up and take a step back. It's interesting because Jalen Brunson is by far, to me, the best player on the team. Jalen Brunson is one of the best players in the NBA. And I don't think he should be the one to take a step back, but I think naturally, with the way that Brown's teams played in Sacramento, which is our most recent example, and kind of the breadcrumbs we've gotten up to this point, doesn't sound like he's going to have the ball in his hands, but it sounds like they're going to want to get the ball moving. They're going to want to go side to side. They might use Cat as a hub.
Yeah.
He might have to adjust his game the most. I could be completely off, and when the season starts and Jalen's doing what Jalen does. I don't think he needs to take a step back, but I could see a world where he has to make an adjustment just based on the way we've seen Mike Brown's teams play in the past.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, I mean, you look at what Brunson did the last 2 years. I mean, he's an all-NBA guard. He's a guy who, like you said, one of the very best players in the league. What he does well is shooting the basketball, isolating and scoring, finding ways to create from himself. A lot of people will complain about like the foul baiting and whatnot, but in my opinion, it's an art. It's an art form. Maybe not one that's appreciated by many, but just the way that he does it is a craft that has to be learned, and he has mastered that craft. Um, if you're looking at Jalen Brunson and his game, and you kind of just mentioned that he might have to not necessarily take a step back, but assume a different role, what is the expectation for him moving forward this season?
I wonder if he'll play a little bit more off the ball. I wonder if we'll see him more as a spot up shooter in situations. I think when the game's on the line, the ball goes to the best closer in basketball, which is him. But I wonder if like we see more spot up opportunities, more cutting, more stuff getting him like coming off pin downs, handoffs, stuff like that, just to get him moving side to side. I could see that. I think that would be maybe one of the bigger adjustments.
This is kind of a random question, but what do you think the starting lineup is on day one? Because they are now deeper. They've added Gershon Yabusele. They've added Jordan Clarkson. It can go like about 8 deep, sometimes 9 deep. Mitchell Robinson is starting the season healthy, all things considered. What is the starting lineup for this team moving forward?
I think that they go Brunson, Bridges, Anunoby, Towns, Robinson.
So hard off the bench. Got you.
I think they go hard off the bench. Do I think that Hart deserves to come off the bench? No, I like having guys who are low maintenance on offense. I like having guys who connect teams. I like guys who hustle. But with that said, I think we found out, as Minnesota did, that Towns needs another center next to him.
Yeah.
I think Robinson, when healthy, is just a very dominant player in a very unique way. And I think you can get creative with the rotations if you start like that. You can quickly go to bring Robinson out 6 minutes in, bring Yabusele or Hart in. If you bring Yabusele in, then you could play a somewhat. Yabusele has to hit 37% more than 1 year for me to call him a floor spacer, but
yep, that's fair. Yep.
Like you could have 5 out right pretty soon in the game. You could go small with Yabusele at center, Hart at 4. I think when you start Mitch, I think it sets the tone defensively. It sets the tone with physicality, and then you can make the adjustments from there. Now, how do they manage Mitchell Robinson's minutes? I think is going to be fascinating. Does he play 3 games and then sit one? Do they do some type of plan for him to try to get him through the season? I'm curious to see how that goes.
Yeah.
But I do think that they go big to start games. I think the offense could take a while to get rolling and get looking like how people want it to look. But I mean, also, like, if you told me that they started like Brunson, Clarkson, Bridges, Anunoby, Towns, like
Clarkson as a starter, interesting.
I don't think so, but like if you told me they wanted to just embrace the 5 out, that wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if Hart just stayed in the starting lineup. Mike Brown is a big fan of Josh Hart, so I'm fascinated to see. I just think if there's a change, it would be Josh Hart because 1, I think he's the only one that will like handle it well.
Right.
2, he was the one that suggested that Mitch start for him in the playoffs. That's just the kind of guy he is. So it wouldn't surprise me. But I'm going to lean, I think they go big to start the season.
Yeah, and I think a big conversation last year, and this is natural with the whole, you look at the starting lineup and the number of minutes that unit played together last year, top minutes in the league for most of these players, like Brunson, Bridges, those guys were near the top of the league, if not at the top of the league, if I'm not mistaken, when it came to minutes per game.
And in the playoffs.
And in the playoffs.
It just didn't work.
Right. And so you have a little bit more depth to rely on now that you can go 8, 9 deep. Do you think that we will see that change? Because it is also a different coaching staff.
Yeah.
Will those minutes go down? Do you think that's the expectation?
I think that the minutes will go down. I think that they will consistently play. I just look at it like this. Like we know Brunson, Bridges, Anunoby Hart, Towns, Robinson. We already got to 6. Yabusele's playing, that's 7. Clarkson's playing, that's 8.
Yep.
Deuce. Miles McBride is
Yeah.
playing, that's 9.
Yep.
Like, I'd be shocked if any of those guys are not in a rotation, right? So I think it's 9 minimum. The question for me is, does he go to 10? They still have a vet minimum that they can sign, and there's some decent players out there. Do they try to develop and throw spot minutes to a Pacome Dadier, a Tyler Kolek, a Ariel Huck-Porty? Some teams have gone 11 deep. We see the Pacers who beat them. To me, it's like, what do the Knicks want to prioritize? Do they care about winning the East and maybe some of the disarray that comes with so many different lineups and so many different bodies? Not to say that they can't win the East by doing that, right? I just wonder if they have. It's going to be a brand new team. That bench is going to be fairly brand new. They're adding, again, 2 pieces plus possibly a third. Do they maybe risk some of the regular season success to try to have everybody like know who they can count on in the playoffs? Because I do think that was a point of frustration last year, where kind of Shamet played in the Pistons series, didn't play in the Boston series, and then inserted in Indiana and had some good moments. And same with DeLon Wright, didn't play, inserted in Indiana and had some good moments, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think the experimenting that late frustrated some. So yeah, I'm curious to see what happens. I think they do at least go 9 deep. Like, I would be shocked if any of the guys I named didn't play.
Yeah,
at least to start the year.
No, you're right. And to your point about the regular season, I think like experimenting, especially for a team of this caliber that is in their championship contending window, is the right thing to do, because last year, we've talked about this too, but from January on, their offense became predictable in the sense that teams knew what to throw at them to be able to limit what they can do offensively. Whether it was, obviously the switching was a big part of it, but there was a lot more to it than just, hey, we're going to switch everything and focus on trying to stop a Brunson, stop a Karl-Anthony Towns. I think it was an idea that, hey, this team is a little bit one-track minded offensively. How do you diversify your offense? I think is one of the questions the Knicks need to answer throughout this regular season. And I guess to that point, a team that is probably, it's either them or Cleveland, depending on who you ask, is the best team in the Eastern Conference. There's been a lot of conversation about the East being, not as good this year, with Boston having a gap year, Indiana having a gap year, et cetera. What is the biggest swing factor for this Knicks team to go from the conference finals to finals or maybe a championship?
I think health. Mike Brown has to be the right coach.
Right.
And we won't know that for a while. He's a good coach, and he's proven to be a good coach. Is he the right coach for this team? We'll find out. It was very clear that what they did last year, they were Halliburton prayer off the rim away from possibly going to the NBA Finals, right?
Yeah.
And to be fair, if I'm the Knicks, if I'm their front office, I completely look at the playoffs last year and it's like, were we even fortunate to be this point? They won the Pistons series by a total of 5 points, and they were missing Isaiah Stewart and Jaden Ivey.
Yeah.
They were down by 20 or 14 plus 3 or 4 times in the Celtics series, right? So there's things like, yeah, they ended up being very fortunate, and they had resilience. But there's things that you could have looked at and like, okay, well, there's something not right here given all the investments we have. So for now, for me, is Mike Brown the right coach for this team? And then injuries. I think it's important to remember, like, yeah, they knew going into last year that Mitchell Robinson would be out for a while, and that's part of why they made the trade for Cat. But other than that, they really didn't have any significant injuries. Brunson missed about a month from the start of March to the end of March with a sprained ankle. But that was really it. Like, guys missed stuff here and there. Like, they were relatively healthy for most of the year.
Yeah.
And when you factor in like that's awesome for OG, right? Like, he's been working towards something like that. Mikal's still Iron Man. Towns didn't have, like, he had nagging injuries, right? And I think he was pretty banged up by the end.
Yeah.
But nothing during the season that was like super, that cost him to miss months or a handful of weeks at a time. Deuce McBride had some small stuff here and there, right? But relatively healthy for an NBA team that played such high minutes. They were pretty healthy. So,
yeah,
you have to hope that if you're a Knicks fan that stays again. Because while I think that they improved the depth for sure, I'm not sure this is like a team that can like go without one of its 3 best players for a long period of time and like still be NBA title contenders.
Yeah. No,
I think the bench is solid. I don't think it's like game changing in that way, unless you have the guys around still.
No, and look, we're in the offseason right now, and on paper you can look at their depth and say absolutely we can count on 9 guys, but sometimes, Clarkson, he was a buyout guy, right? Like for a reason, right? So there's that aspect to it too. Maybe he just can't provide you the ideal version of what Jordan Clarkson can do on a daily. Want to ask you this. Any trades, anything you think might be on the horizon for this team, especially because they're locked into their core for the most part. Do you think there's anything to look out for on the trade front as we enter this season?
I think the future Mitchell Robinson is worth taking a look at. He's extension eligible. If they extend him, like they're really, really flirting with the second apron the next year. He has an extensive injury history. Really good player the last few years when healthy. Extensive injury history. Like they're going to have to make a decision on somebody. They can't keep and pay everybody. I think that's the one to watch. And I think what's fascinating would be if Mitch played like he did in the playoffs for the first 35 games of the regular season, and they're right there in the driver's seat. Do the Knicks try to capitalize on his play and his expiring contract, or do they risk him going into the offseason and going somewhere else just to obviously pursue a title? It seems like their goal is to win a title, so whatever happens from there to help with that, I think will be important. But yeah, I think Mitchell Robinson's future is probably the most intriguing one to watch. I don't see, like, obviously Brunson's not getting traded. Mikal can get traded right before the deadline. I think the only way that they trade like a Mikal or an OG is if, again, like a Giannis becomes available, or if it's just not working. Like they get to that point, it's not working. But yeah, I think Mitchell Robinson's probably the one that everybody has their eyes on as a guy who's extension eligible, and I just don't see him getting one. Prior to the start of the season.
That's interesting though, because like that big man position, like we just talked about double big lineups and how important having a center is for Cat. Like I think he's so important to what they want to do and their ultimate goals. Speaking of ultimate goals, I mean, we talked about the fact that this team has their eyes on a championship and getting there. But what do you think if you had a crystal ball looking at August 2026? What is the most realistic outcome for this Knicks team this season?
I mean, I think that they have a legitimate chance to get back to where they did last year. It's always tough to tell, right? Like, there's so many factors that go into winning a championship, and even just making the finals or the Eastern Conference Finals, as the Knicks can attest to in that wild ride that they had the first 2 rounds before they got there. I think on paper, in the East, they're as talented as anybody. They have had their issues with Cleveland. They could not beat Cleveland last year. Cleveland gave them their biggest beatdown of the year, and Cleveland's coming back, basically the same squad, and a little more hungrier too, just like the Knicks. So ultimately, in my head, I think it's going to be those 2 in the Eastern Conference Finals. If you told me like an Orlando had like an Indiana run this year, if you told me Detroit had like an Indiana run this year, if you told me Atlanta had like an Indiana run this year, like there's some teams that like I think, the East is unproven, but like there could be some fun stuff happening in the East this year. And I also keep forgetting to mention the most dominant players in the East, in Giannis. He's still playing. And everybody plug your ears. Like Philly is, we make fun of Philly all the time, and rightfully so. But I mean, on paper,
they're good. On paper,
if they stay healthy, like that's an actual like legitimate team. So in my head says Knicks, Cavs, Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think. Well, I got to see how the Thunder come out, because I have like a theory that only certain guys and certain teams are wired to do it again and again and again. Like I didn't think Denver, after they won one, I thought Denver would kind of relax their shoulders. I thought kind of Toronto would relax their shoulders, and obviously Kawhi left. That was a big thing. Like, I need to see how hungry OKC is out of the gate to see if they want to do it again. But with that said, I think there's a few teams in the West that I would maybe put above like the Knicks or Cleveland in terms of winning the title. But I think the Knicks can get there. I think it's going to be them and Cleveland in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, I mean, look, as we look ahead to it, it is a long season. That it's a lot can change in 8 to 10 months, and we'll see how that looks for the New York Knicks over the next course of the season. James, appreciate you as always hopping on. Enjoy the rest of your off season. Thank you very much for everybody else tapping into The Athletic. Appreciate you, James.
I appreciate you, man.